Good morning. So today I want to talk a little bit about what it's like to be young and to be trying to get a job and to trying to work, and more specifically, how do you quantify all of the things that would be experience, be skills, be all of the things that nobody really tells you very much about. So when I was younger, going through junior high, high school, everybody tells you the same thing. Get a job. Get a job and go to college. Those are the two biggest things. Get a job and go to college. If you go to college, you're more likely to get a really good job. You're more likely to be more desirable to hire people who are hiring managers, different groups and such. And then it was get a job, make sure you get work experience. And I wasn't always a big fan of the way my high school did it, because they had a tendency to speak to like the better kids, and by that I meant the kids that were in the groups that got the better grades, the ones that were like in the AP courses, the pre-AP courses, the GT courses, and all of that. So all of those kids were being told, you need to go to college. There isn't another option for you. You are going to college. But then I'm walking out, the cats there just and then they would tell some of the lower end students, the ones that weren't, doing as well, or the ones that were Marble, get down from there. They're very distracting today. The ones that didn't get as many good grades, the ones that aren't in the harder classes, the ones that were in the regular classes and all of that, would be told more along the lines of like getting a job, getting a trade. Some of them were told to go to like the community college to get an associate's degree, and they were spoken to differently. And I wasn't a really big fan of that, because it made it seem like the choices they were offering them were the lesser choices, which absolutely isn't true. And so there was that aspect of it. But then there was also all of the, the things that they tell us, like about college making us, I'm just going to keep hitting everything today. We're just going to assume it's going to be a rocky video. They made it seem like college was exactly what you needed to do to make your life easier. Cut forward to all of these years later, I did college. I've been trying to get a good long-term job to get all of the experience that everybody's always asking for. And I am seeing so many things that just make me go, And part of that is, if you go into the news and you look up the student loan debt crisis and all of that stuff, it is essentially all of these kids took that advice and went to college, and they couldn't always afford it, whether because they didn't quite get good enough grades for some of the bigger scholarships, or they weren't doing enough volunteer hours for some scholarships. There was a lot of different criteria, and I'm going to go get this cat before she gets herself into more trouble. She's trying to climb curtains over here. I don't know what got into them. I think they might have found their stash of candy. Before you panic, not actually candy. They just might have morning energy. Anyway, so all of these people who went to college looking for, that higher education, the thing to make their lives easier, to get the jobs and all of that stuff. And now they are going through this phase where they have to pay off all of that student loan debt. My thoughts are coming slow today. They're trying to pay off all of that student loan debt. And they make it seem like it's our fault, we shouldn't have, gotten into this much debt. But there are a few people who are talking about it who don't blame, which is a really good thing, because it's not like we really know. So think about it. When you go to college, you're roughly around 18 years old. My sister went to college at 17. So you're really young. You're just becoming an adult. You're going into the college system to get your education that everybody tells you you need. And then the bills come in. Okay, well, how do I pay for these bills? You go to the financial aid center. That is the place where you go to help look for funds to use. And they give you all of the applications that you have to fill out. In addition to your college application, you have to fill out all of the financial aid applications. So you go in, you fill out all of these applications for them as well. You fill out, there's some that are, okay, you fill out one application and you get all of the scholarships that we have here. Others are, you fill out this one application for this one scholarship, and so on. So there's all of these different things that you have to be applying for, and you have to be on top of it. If you don't know about the center, or you don't know about the things that are available, you're more than likely not going to find that money. In which case, you go online, and I used to go online. It would be in my little bill center, I forget what it's called. It's been a while. You go on, and it has a breakdown of, okay, this is what your semester cost is, and it have the fall and the spring. It wouldn't have the college up yet. That comes later. So fall, spring, summer later. And then it would say, okay, with your FAFSA, which if you didn't apply for it, you always try to apply for it anyway, even if it's going to be late, because that's going to help you a lot. So you'll have to apply for that. Sometimes high schools will tell you, not all the time. I got lucky, I got told. So, and then it says this is how much money you're getting from the government, and it will have the things like the Pell Grant that are free money that you get to keep to use for college. And then it will have any scholarships that you get, whether they're college scholarships, whether they're big scholarships. I was in the top 5. I don't remember if it was 5 or 10%. Either way, of my graduating class, and there was a scholarship for that. So I just had to, in order to maintain it after my first year of college, I had to get a certain GPA. That one came up. And there's all of these little scholarships that come up. Either you've applied for them, or you qualified for it by doing something, or by having certain grades, or by studying a certain field, and so on and so forth. So it's got all of those lists. And then at the very bottom, it has subsidized and unsubsidized student loans. If you do not know what those are, they sound right around the same as the rest of them, and it's usually a set amount of this is how much you can take out. And I didn't know the difference between the subsidized and unsubsidized. They make you take a quick video course, and you're supposed to check all the boxes, and we've educated you, now you're supposed to know what it is. The way I learned it was I went and asked my dad, because I think he knows everything. I went and I asked him, and he helped me figure it out, and he said, okay, one of these is going to be that the government will pay for the interest until you're done with college, and then you have to pay it back, and you have to pay back whatever interest after the fact. Whereas the other one will accrue interest while you're in college, and then you still have to pay back the same amount, except with the interest that it's accrued, instead of starting interest at the end of college, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, go ask him. I'm trying to explain it the best I can. And so that's basically the difference. So one of them is okay if you need it. The other one, try not to, because it's going to cost you more money in the long run. However, they're both there if you need them. And you can select all of these and choose which ones you want to apply. So if you want to put the Pell Grant, if you want to put all your scholarships, which you do, you essentially go and check the boxes, and it says, okay, we've put the full fund of these towards it. And then you get to see if you have any balance left over. So, okay, we've applied all of your free money here. You still owe us X dollars, either $1,000, either a couple hundred, $1, whatever the remainder is. If that covers everything, you're going to say, okay, well, now you have X dollars left over, which is a good thing, because you get to keep that, and you get to pay for textbooks, gas, your dorms, and all of the other stuff that you might need to pay for. So that's what the excess is. It doesn't mean that you get to go out and eat everywhere and buy fancy clothes. You're supposed to continue to pay for college. If you didn't cover everything with your scholarships, it's going to go into the student loans, and you can either apply them or you can pay the remainder. And honestly, it really depends on how much is left over. If you can afford it, it's always better to pay for it. Why? Because those student loans add up, which is what's caused this student debt crisis. So now that I've kind of explained where it comes from, let's go into what the crisis is. And so This is all building up to what a bigger problem about how to quantify it, just so you know. It just takes a lot of build up. So student loan crisis is people who didn't necessarily know or knew but needed the money anyway, who took on all of the student loan debt, and it depends where you went to college how much of it you get. So I went to the UTPA, or now as it's called, the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. And that is considered a fairly cheap college in the UT system. So it's still a good college, but it's not as expensive as, let's say, UT Austin, or one of the big Ivy League schools that are more expensive. So what my college cost was a lot less, so I didn't walk away with hundreds of thousands of student loan debt. I think I accrued about $10,000. And the interest rate is really low and the payments aren't really big. So I've been able to maintain, doing payments ever since I've gotten out of college. This isn't always the case. Some people, they accrue a lot more. So my husband, for instance, went to UTSA, and it's a more expensive college, and he went for longer than I did. To finish his, I want to say he said he did 5 years of college. I did 4-ish. I was like 4.5, but anyway. Or 3.5. But definitely cut off at 4. So either way, my bill at the end was $10,000. His bill is a lot more than mine. I don't want to ask because I don't want to know. He's got more student debt than I do because he didn't get as many scholarships. He had some troubles with certain people are supposed to pay because he's like all of these other things. He had more trouble dealing with the scholarships and financial aid portion because of confusion and who's supposed to pay what. And so in the end, it didn't really matter in the end. He ended up with X amount of student loan debt that he has to pay off. And so he managed to get a good job, and he's been paying it off just fine. However, that's not always the case. Some people will come out of that end and not be able to find a job because if you will go and apply for a job at our age, there is a lot of, okay, well, we want a bachelor's degree. Great. We just spent a lot of money and a lot of time to get a bachelor's degree. We've got that box checked. And then right underneath it, it usually asks for 5 to 10 years experience in your industry. So that means that the time that you spent in college, you should have been having a job in your industry. However, a lot of the time, the jobs in your industry require a bachelor's degree. So now you have to go figure out what that happy medium is, one that will take your bachelor's degree, but not require a lot of experience that we do not have yet because we're trying to get the experience to do well. Some industries are okay. So like if you are in more of a mathematic or a technical or an engineering kind of thing, there's typically assumed to be a lot more jobs that are available to you because you know the stuff to do the job already. That's the whole point of school. However, in other industries, like if you're going to human resources, you're going to customer service, or I did communications, that it's a lot harder because they still want you to have experience doing something along those lines. And so we have to find a job that will give us the experience in communications while not paying us under a certain amount. So everybody says, we'll just start at the bottom. That would be okay, but that's also why a lot of people my age usually still live at home, because entry-level jobs do not pay enough, usually, to pay for living costs. So whether you're renting, you're buying, usually renting if you're my age, but if you happen to buy a house, great for you. Renting or buying a house, utilities, groceries, and then whatever your student loan payment is, on top of anything else you might need, like clothing. But why do you have to pay for clothing? Because you need to be able to dress for your job. And nice clothing for a nice job usually costs a pretty penny. And that's something that people don't always account for. Well, you buy it once and it's done. No, you buy it once, you wear it out, you have to buy it again. It's the way it goes. There's other things that people don't always think about when they say, oh, well, it doesn't pay enough. So if we take these entry-level jobs, a lot of the times we stay at home and we work it so that we can continue to pay the student loan debts and things that we can't not pay. So sometimes you have to buy a car. If you manage to be lucky to be given a car, well, then you still have to pay for gas, you still have to pay for oil changes, you have to pay for inspections, and all of the stuff that comes with owning a car. So there's all of these things that you have to pay for. And if you don't make enough to pay for living expenses, that's a really hard sell for you sometimes, because it's, okay, well, how am I supposed to do this? So there's all of these things that contribute to this. So if you don't want the entry-level job, you have to find someone who will be willing to hopefully sit down with you and you can convince them that you know what you're doing. Which is really frustrating for us, because we just went to college for 4 years to learn how to do what you're asking us to do, only for you to say that we don't have enough experience or we don't know enough. Kind of starts to feel like that education didn't do much for you, huh? Which comes to the whole quantifying it thing. I have heard from a lot of people, well, you have to sit down and you have to write down on a resume all of the things that you know how to do. So I know how to use Microsoft Office. I'm quite proficient in it because I've practiced and I used it a lot. In addition to that, I know how to do Google Ads now because I went and looked it up. I learned how to do it. I know how to use social media. It's not really something that you think about, but in a communications marketing position, that actually might be a really good thing. So you have to put that on there. How many languages do you speak? How well do you speak them? What other things do you do? And then there's what other things did you do in your free time? So for me, when I was in high school and junior high, I used to help out with the church a lot, doing things like helping out as a CCD teacher, helping out as a youth group coordinator, volunteering to pick up trash on the side of the road, do things like helping out with Bible study. Now I'm trying to remember, and it's really hard because here's the thing for me. I didn't really consider that volunteer work because it was just something that I wanted to do. I was going there and they needed help and I helped them. That is volunteer though. So they need you to quantify that as skills and experience so that you can qualify yourself for jobs. How do you quantify it? That is always the tricky thing, because it's not a job you held, it was a volunteer position. And nobody really tells you about these things. This was something that I figured out from a couple of different people that I've met in my life. Other people who, after meeting me, were like, I didn't know that you volunteered and did all of this stuff, or that you did any of this stuff. And I'm like, well, I mean, I guess, yeah, it was volunteer, but it was just things that my family did. Like if there was a plate sale back home to raise money for something, we would go and we would buy plates and we would see if they had enough people, or if we were part of the group, we would be back in the kitchen making sure all the food was good, prepping the plates, handing out the plates, walking people to their cars. Sometimes we would be delivering plates, and when I got old enough and I was driving, I would go driving around the valley delivering plates. I didn't really think of that as volunteer. It was just we were a community and I knew these people and they needed help and I was available, so I helped. Yeah, that's just the way I was brought up. But they kept telling me, this is volunteer work that you need to be putting on your resume because it counts as experience. It counts as working experience, and these people can vouch that you were working hard. And more than that, you were working hard for free. So it means that you have a good work ethic, and there's all of these things that it says about you that are good things to help you get a job. However, nobody told me that prior to leaving. I heard it a little bit when I was getting into college, that it was really good to let them know that you volunteered because you were good at doing other things and you would be a successful student. I've looked into it a lot and watched a lot of videos on how this is supposed to help you. But I had to be told about it in order to do research about it, because I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't think about it. And then it came the next part, which is the whole point of the video, which was, how do I quantify it? How do I put it down on a resume? I helped hand out plates. I helped, watch a bunch of kids run around and make sure they didn't hurt themselves. I tried to teach children things. I showed up early in the morning on Sundays and took care of a group of kids. These are just things that I don't really know how to put it down. And if you say, well, help hire someone to help me with a resume. I need a job for the money to hire somebody. There's a lot of really weird loops and cycles. But my point is, and there is a point, we need to help out this younger generation. Before we make assumptions, before we just place blame, before we try to make it seem like they're the worst in the world, which we've done for every generation since the beginning of time, it seems, we need to see how we can help them. If you're in the workplace and you're a hiring manager, think about the things and the skills that you need to hire for that they might not think are important skills to write down. If you need someone to do social media, we grew up with it, and it's something that we know, but it's not something that we would consider job related, because since as long as I can remember, social media was a waste of time, and it was, a way that we were desocializing ourselves, and it's always been pitched to us as a negative. So why would we tell you that we're good at it? If we mention something about volunteering, ask us about it, because odds are we didn't think it was important to put down. Make a volunteer question. Have you ever volunteered? What kind of volunteer work are you doing? What kind of volunteer work have you done? I used to volunteer in an office and do a lot of office work. I didn't think to put it down. So before you start pointing fingers or blaming, ask them, and I see my little lump in the background, ask them how you can help. Maybe you, who has more experience, can help out those of us that don't. Help us figure out what we're doing wrong or what we need to be doing right. Or maybe we just need to hear, job hunting takes time and it's hard. Be patient. Thanks for listening.